We're going to pick up where we left off from yesterday. So we're going to start with surpluses and shortages. You guys already told me what you think they are. Surplus is when you have more of something. A shortage is when you don't have enough of something. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about this. It says if the price is above the equilibrium price. Okay? It says buyers will purchase less than is available. Think about that. If the price is higher than equilibrium, then we're going to buy less of it, right? And suppliers will offer more. Obviously, that's going to create more or less. It's going to create more of a product. So what do we have? A surplus. So in your notes, put down, and this is the important part, when price is above equilibrium. And I'm going to pull this over and show you what I mean by it here in a second. When price is above equilibrium, okay, then we are going to buy less, or consumers will buy less. And then suppliers will produce more. Or will offer more, I should say. They're not going to keep producing it, but they will offer more. Suppliers will offer more. Thus, all that creates a surplus. Now, how do businesses go about trying to not create a surplus? What do they offer? Does anybody know? Take a car dealership. At the end of the year, they always have last year's models on their lot, right? And they're wanting the new models on their lot because people like to buy new most of the time, right? So what do they offer you on those older models if you'll come buy one? A whole lot of deal incentives. It's called an incentive. They're trying to say, well, if you'll come look at this car, we'll knock $10,000 off of it right now, or we'll give you the X amount of years of a warranty, or this, and this. The reason is they're trying to move that so they don't have a surplus of cars, because more than likely they've already ordered the New Year stuff and they're trying to make room for it, just like any business. Okay? So, key to this: if the price is above equilibrium, I'm going to show you some charts that show surplus here in a second. If price is above equilibrium, that means consumers are buying less because the price is high, right? And then the suppliers have already offered what they have, so they're going to have too many of them. Okay? Now, on the other side of that, you have shortages. Well, shortage happens when the price is below equilibrium. Okay? So if price is below equilibrium, that means that consumers are buying more of it or less of it. If you find a product that's cheaper and you like it, are you going to buy more or less of it? You're going to buy more of it. So consumers buy more, or will buy more. Well, if consumers are buying more, the price is below equilibrium, suppliers are going to want to supply more or less of it. Remember, the price is low, so what are they trying to do? They don't want to sell it at that low price. They want the price to be where? Higher. Equilibrium, right? So the suppliers will supply less, or they will offer less. Well, think about it. If everybody's wanting a product, but there's not enough of that product, what did we just create? A shortage.
Kind of like with the toilet paper.
Yeah, made it scarcity. Absolutely. Now here's how I kind of wrote that in my notes, just so you guys can see it. Well, I thought I could show it to you. Let's do That's just kind of how I put it. If price is above equilibrium, I kind of underline that part. And if price is below equilibrium. So I know that if it's below, it creates a shortage, and if it's above, it creates a surplus. Is everybody with me on that? Now, let's move on to the next part. And you guys should have a little bit of an idea about this. We're just going to continue this, okay? Somewhere on your notes, what we just finished was 3A, showing you guys what supply and demand was and what a shortage and surplus was. Does that make sense? This next part is 3B. And all it is, it's the interaction of supply and demand with the market. The biggest emphasis on this is equilibrium. We're going to talk about finding equilibrium, okay? So determining equilibrium. How do we find that magic number where businesses supply just enough to keep everybody happy, where supply and demand are equal? Make sure you have your mask.
You may now re-enter the building. You may now re-enter the building.
All right, so definitely left the computer recording. So everybody at home got to have the fire drill too. Hope they left their house. Oh well. All right, so we're going to talk about equilibrium. Now again, equilibrium is when supply and demand equal out. There's nothing left and everybody is satisfied. All right. So a couple things, and y'all read that? All right, so it says markets exist when buyers and sellers interact, obviously. It says this interaction determines market price and thereby allocates scarce goods and resources. Prices send signals and provide incentives to buyers and sellers. When supply or demand changes, market prices adjust and it affects incentives. Now, I feel like we're going to see the word incentive quite a bit today. Do any of you know what the word incentive means? If I were to give you an incentive, what do you think I'm trying to do?
Give you a reason to buy it.
Yeah, I'm trying to persuade you to do something that I would like for you to do. Like when you guys, I seen Jackson had on a Hollister shirt today, so I'm assuming that's a popular brand for y'all's age group. Was it Hollister?
Yeah.
Okay. If you go into a Hollister store, most of the time the first rack of clothes you go look at is which one? Yeah, the sale one, like the 50% off or the buy one, get one free. All that is an incentive, okay? What Hollister is trying to get you to do is buy that $30 t-shirt, and if you buy that $30 t-shirt, they're going to give you one free, right? They're making you feel like you're getting a deal, and when you do that and you leave their store, would you come back to it to buy something else? Yeah, because you felt like, great, I got a deal. But when you get down to it, Hollister itself's probably got $5 in those t-shirts. Just like Nike, just like Abercrombie, just like any other retail store. But they bump the price up because you're buying a symbol, right? Like Under Armour. I've got an Under Armour shirt on. This shirt probably costs $7 or $8 to make, and I probably paid $30 or $40 for it, right? But you're buying a logo. But if they buy one, get one free, you, hey, I got two of these. Is Hollister still making money in that scenario? Yeah. They're still going to make not as much as they normally would, but you feel comfortable about coming back, and that's their idea, okay? So an incentive is anything that incites you to want to buy something. You guys with me? So that's a little bit about that. So we're going to talk about a market economy and how supply and demand interact with one another. Okay? Now again, it says a market exists when buyers and sellers exchange goods and services. So basically, how are markets determining price? Okay? Now, it says markets prices are determined through the buying and selling of decisions made by buyers and sellers. We need to jot that down, okay? So, it's that second little thing that says what is a market? Put down determining price. Determining price. So, price is determined Price is determined by buying and selling decisions. Now, I have told you all up to this point which one of those decides price, consumers or producers. It's going to be consumers, okay? Now, what it means by selling decisions, if I'm a smart businessman, I'm going to sell what people are buying, right? So that's the idea. And that's how businesses know what to sell. If I make a product and nobody wants it, then I need to find something else to do, okay? So then the last part, it says, what is equilibrium price? And we've kind of talked about this. It says the equilibrium price is the one price at which quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So we're kind of going to write this as a math equation, but I want you to put it down in your notes like what I'm about to show you, okay? So equilibrium price equals, okay? Everybody with me so far? Quantity supplied plus quantity demanded. So with all things being the same, all right, all things being considered the same, if I produce the exact amount of something that is being demanded, have I reached equilibrium? Huh?
Yeah.
This plus sign could also be an equal sign. When quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, then you have equilibrium price. None left over and everybody's satisfied. That's the ultimate goal. Okay? Everybody, so far so simple on this? Y'all with me? All right. So, now, this goes back to what we talked about a minute ago. It says equilibrium price and quantity are revealed on supply and demand graph. You're going to see these on your next test, on quizzes, on things of that nature. But it says where the supply and demand curves intersect. Now, when we draw these, obviously everything I'm going to show you today is a straight line. Okay? The demand and the supply is a straight line. They actually call them curves. Okay? Because you can see them. Let me see if I can find you one and it makes sense. Like if you were to just Google supply and demand curves, you see how all these are kind of straight? Well, then every once in a while, you see how that one bows? See how they bow? They can do that. Obviously they can do that because you're trying to find the price and the quantity of something to equilibrium, exact. So the line may be a little skewed, but they're still going to cross at some point. Like for example, you see how this moved? Yeah. Well, there's a new supply, there's a new equilibrium. Does that make sense? And we're going to talk about how they shift and do things of that nature here in a little while, okay? But it's kind of cool. I like dealing with this part, all right? So what we're going to do, what we're going to attempt to do, and we're going to try to be exact with it, is I would like for you guys to draw a supply and demand chart, okay? But I don't want you to put any numbers on it. And what I mean by that is just draw the X and Y axes in your notes. Okay, and I'm going to try to draw one with you. And we're going to go over, I'm going to show you 3 things. We're going to draw 3 of them. Does that make sense? And I want you to put them side by side because we're going to refer back to them. So kind of do it like this. And you guys know how much room you have on your paper, so they don't have to be exactly the same, but I would like for them to be pretty close. And again, don't put any numbers or anything on it. We're just going to draw a demand curve and a supply curve in each. And you can have them cross wherever you want to. I'm just going to have all mine cross in the middle. Okay? Now the numbers we'll talk about here in a minute, but again, you have the price over here, and you got the quantity down here on most of the ones that you're going to have to read. Okay? Now, this line here represents what? Demand or supply?
Demand.
That's demand. Okay? So obviously the other line, or the other curve, represents supply. Okay? Now, you're sitting there thinking, why is he making me draw all these? I can just look at them on Google. Yeah, you could. Okay? But the first one that we're going to draw here, let me see if I can get it where it's on both pages. Oops. All right, so in our first one, our first chart we have right here, y'all with me? I want you to draw equilibrium. Well, where is equilibrium on this graph? Where they cross, where the demand and the supply interact, correct? So that's going to be right here. Okay, so draw your line, and I do the block ones, or the broke ones. Now that right there is equilibrium. We've pretty much got that part down, I hope, right? Now, here's where this can get somewhat complicated, but I don't want you to, let me make sure I'm not jumping ahead of myself here. Okay, so let's use the same chart we're on, okay? So let's look at the one that we're dealing with that we just drew equilibrium price on, okay? Now, you may see a question that says, let's say that this product they find equilibrium for and everything's going well. And then all of a sudden, there's more demand for that product. People want more of it for whatever reason. So the demand increases, right? So in order to find equilibrium, if there's an increase in demand, which way would we have to move this line? Would we move it to the left or would we move it to the right? We'd move anything going up, we move to the right. Anything going down, we move to the left. You guys with me so far? So let's say demand increased. So now this was our demand 1, right? That was our first demand line. So demand increases. So now our new demand line, let's say, goes somewhere through here. Okay? So let's just say this is D2, demand 2. Okay? Now, did equilibrium price and equilibrium supply change? Yeah. And it's still where they meet. But since demand went up, and you guys can almost picture this, since demand went up, what happened to the price of it? It went up a little bit, and so did the supply, but that's equilibrium. You guys see that? Does everybody understand what I'm getting at there? Same concept. What if demand had went down all of a sudden? We'd have simply moved the demand curve to over here. You don't have to draw this one, but if there was a decrease in it, let's say it moved to here, now our equilibrium comes to here, right? So what would our price be? Suppliers would have to drop it because what happened to the demand? It went down. And they're also going to try to lower the supply because, again, nobody really wants it. So you guys see how that works? You can shift anything. Guys, they could be a shift in the supply. They could be producing more something all of a sudden and it can move up. Okay? So if it moved up, we would move it this way, right? And if it went down, we'd move it back that way. Okay? But that's neither here nor there right now. So is everybody good with equilibrium? I'm gonna write that down. All right, so far so simple. Okay, now let's see if we can really confuse you. The next one we're going to look at deals with a surplus, I believe. Okay? Yes. All right. So, in your notes, it says, what happens when the price for a good or service is higher than equilibrium? So let's go back to our little chart. We drew 3 of them, right? in that second chart, everything that you're about to write down, I would write under it. You guys with me? And the very first thing I'd put is surplus. Okay? And just so you can see what I'm trying to set mine up like. I'm going to write surplus, and then all my notes is going to go right here for this one. Okay? Y'all with me? So, what is a surplus? It says if the price is above equilibrium. I think we put that at the top of your paper, didn't we?
Yes.
So, surplus equals price above equilibrium. Now, guys, use common sense. Anytime they say a price is high, are people going to want more or less of it? They're going to want less of it, right? So what this is saying is when there's a surplus, what's demand? Is it high or is demand low? It is low. Nobody wants it. So if demand is low, I told you yesterday that when demand is low, supply is always opposite of it. So that means if demand's low, supply is high, we get a surplus. You guys with me? Now, to see that on a chart, here's what we got to look at. It says when a surplus exists, prices will decrease until they reach equilibrium price. And I'll show you that in a second. All right. So what they're saying is, let's say that I'm going to draw some numbers here just to make this realistic. 0, 5, 15, 30. Then over here you got 20, 40, 60. Okay? So, equilibrium, now again, don't focus with me. Equilibrium in this scenario would be to make about 40 of them and sell them at about $15, right? If that were the case. Oh, you can't see it. So it would be roughly 15 or 40, right? Supply 40, sell them for 15. That would be equilibrium. But what this is saying is that the price is above equilibrium. Well, who sets price? Consumers or producers? Consumers. So who demands things? Consumers. So let's say instead of the $15, let's say the demand, they've started selling it somewhere right in there. Okay? So our price is like, I don't know, $20, give or take. Okay? Now, that means that our price is above equilibrium, correct? Now, if I were to draw a line, I know. I'm trying to show you this right here. If I can draw a line all the way over to supply, a straight line. Now, obviously, it's not going to be straight. Here's what I've got. Y'all see my line up here? If I draw from these points, if I go straight down from each, here's what that is telling me. Since the price is here, and guys, if you ever have to answer any questions like this, I'll give you a price that's above equilibrium. Okay? And I'm going to say figure out the surplus. But if that's the price, what this is stating is that the quantity demanded is about 25. Y'all see where I'm at there? Does that make sense? But the quantity supplied is up around 50 or 55. So think about it. If they're only demanding 25, but they're supplying 55, what is that giving us? A what? That's a surplus. So that's how you end up with a surplus. And again, all this is happening because the price is above or below equilibrium. Above. Just get that in your head. Price is above equilibrium, you're going to create a surplus. Okay? So far, so simple? I hope. Anybody confused? All right. Moving forward. Now we just figured out what a surplus does. I don't even know why that's blank. Let's talk about a shortage. Now again, I'm going to go underneath my third little graph, and I'm gonna put down something. We wrote down surplus is a price above equilibrium. So what do you think I'm gonna write down underneath this third link? We're gonna write down a shortage, and that's when price is above or below equilibrium. Price is below equilibrium. Okay? And price is below equilibrium. Okay? So, same concept. We're just going to do it on a different scale. Who demands things? Or excuse me, who sets price? Consumers, which they demand, right? So, let's say demand, here's our equilibrium, right? And a shortage is when a price is below equilibrium. I'm still on the demand line. Y'all see me? So let's say our price is somewhere right in here. Okay? Now, again, let's add some numbers just for the sake of it making it realistic. So, what is happening here? And again, we'll draw our little line to where it meets the supply. Okay, and then we'll go straight down with it. Now see, this is where you guys have got to be smart. You've got to keep these lines, which one's which curve is which. If I would have wrote my price on the supply line right here, would I have been right? No, I'd have confused myself. The price got to stay on the demand line. Okay? So, what this is suggesting that a shortage is happening is that the quantity demanded for whatever this product may be, they're saying it's around 55. People want about 55 of these products. But the supply, they are only supplying about 20 of them. Does that make sense? So what are they going to have to do to the price to keep them on the shelf? Oh, no. They're going to have to raise it so people, till they can get back to what? What are we trying to get back to? Think. We're right here. We're trying to get back to here, right? So we're going to eventually have to do what with the price? So everything equals back out into equilibrium, correct? Y'all see how that works? So this will be considered a shortage. A price below equilibrium and a price above equilibrium. Okay? Has anybody got any questions about that? Does that make sense? All right, a couple of things we're going to jot down here, and then I'm going to let you try a couple of these on your own. Underneath a shortage, jot down that it usually results in a price increase. And I would just draw it like this. Otherwise, I ain't got to write it all out. With a shortage, prices normally go up. And guys, common sense, it has to go up because we've got to get back to where? Equilibrium. And with a surplus, what's going to happen to the price of things? Go down. So if I were to give you guys a graph and say find the surplus, find the shortage, or find equilibrium, do you think you would be able to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So moving on. All right, so how does the graph show what happens to equilibrium price when one of the determinants of demand and supply changes? Guys, we talked about that when we shifted the demand and the supply curve. Y'all, does that make sense? Like, if something changes for one of them, there's going to be a little bit of a shift in that, and then all the calculations have to be redone. I'm not going to get that in depth with you guys just yet, okay? But does anybody have any questions on how this works? Y'all good with that? All right, we're going to try something right here.